Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I've spent the last 2+ decades of my life. Each video is just me taking you through the course of my bid. And I'm trying to put it in chronological order. But of course, I don't have a perfect memory. So sometimes I'm going to jump back and forth as I remember them. But I'm going to try to keep it in a timeline so you can get a first-hand experience of what it's really like doing time. I mean, of course, I'm emphasizing the stories that, made an impression on me. And the ones that make an impression on you are usually things that are traumatic, out of the ordinary or chaotic. Because through the course of my time, every day is just redundant, It's like you're stuck in a Groundhog's Day. Every morning you wake up and it's the same four walls. And it's the same routine. I get up at 5:30 every morning, look for my socks, put on my shoes. When I was in Beaumont, that was my routine. I get up, put on my socks, put on my shoe, reach under my pillow or on the side of my bunk, wherever I have my knife at, pick that up, put on some shorts, slip that into my pocket, and I brush my teeth. When I'm done brushing my teeth, my Shelly gets up and brush his teeth. Same routine. And after that, we just sit and wait for them to crack the door, strapped, every morning. From the time I'm out of that cell till the time you lock me in, I'm armed, And if I'm not armed, I have access to stuff throughout the unit and throughout the yard. Because, when I emphasize, that this is a war zone, it's a war zone. You have gangs and races that don't get along, especially on the streets, but are forced into an unsteady truth because we don't want to be locked down, because if you can't figure out how to get along, and once they eventually run out of prison to separate you guys, then they're just going to lock everybody down. So for the most part, you have a lot of gangs that come in there that might have been rivals on the streets or enemies on the streets, but are forced into a coalition or just even an understanding, because throughout the 90s, even now, out in Southern California, Mexicans and blacks kill each other. When I was in Victorville around 2004, between 2004 and 2005, it was really hot on the streets. On the streets, we're watching, we're in Victorville, so we get news that come out of LA and San Diego and all that. And on the street for a period of time, every time you see on the news, it was just blacks and Mexicans getting into it on the streets. So, all these people that are in prison, they have extended family that are still out in the streets, that are still active members of whatever organization they're from. So a lot of things don't get contained in their prospective place. Sometimes stuff on the streets, stuff that happens on the streets will spill over into the penitentiary. And a lot of times, stuff that happened in the penitentiary will spill over out into the streets. These things, these gangs and these organizations, these families didn't sprout up out of nowhere. They're homegrown from different barrios, different neighborhoods throughout the country. And, I'm not here to speak on the morals or the right and wrongs of any of those things, because I'm never here to tell you what you should and shouldn't do with your life. If anything, if there's any lessons to these stories that I share with you, it's really to emphasize what is it that you're really getting yourself into. To emphasize that you should really take a look and be clear-headed about the stuff you sign up for. Because, you know, some things that feel like are in fashion today might not be tomorrow. You know, when I watch these music videos and they play these old videos or these hip-hop videos back in the 90s, you know, everybody's in clothes 3 sizes too big for them. Back then, we thought it looked cool. We thought that was the shit, you know, oversized clothes and stuff. But when you look at it now, it's just like, what the hell? You know, same thing with the style right now, today. You know, everybody's wearing them, I guess they call them skinny jeans. I thought they were like yoga pants, you know, you know, khaki yoga pants or whatever. It's sometimes I'm self-conscious with the clothes that I wear that my wife buys me. You know, it's size 32 waist. I try to tell her 36. She's like, nah, you don't wear no damn 36. But anyway, but my point is, like, things that you feel that you're okay with today, you might not be okay with 20 years down the road. But you don't have the life experience to be able to project yourself that far into the future. You don't have the life experience to even have an understanding, you know, if you're in your teens, early 20s, of what's really important to you. You know, a lot of times we don't understand the value of something until either we're taken away from it or it's taken away from us. You could ask people in there, of all the people in there, like, what would they pay? What would they give up for a freaking cheeseburger at McDonald's? Us out here knowing that cheeseburger at McDonald's is probably crap. You know, it's probably just gonna go right to your artery. But, you know, it's just, like I said, you don't ever notice anything around you when it's plentiful. You don't notice, you know, how privileged it is for me right now just to get up and walk outside this door, walk out to my front yard, look down the street, and just see the mountains in the view. So, you know, a lot of people, by the time they come up, by the time they get to a point in their life and realize, hey, maybe this ain't really cut out for me, it's already too late. They're already in too deep. They already got their 2-3 life sentences, or they know too much, and there's no way for them to be able to walk away from it gracefully. You know, a prime example, when I was in the SHU in Florence, you know, after I got jumped, I spent about 6 months in the SHU from April all the way to October. And while I was there, one of my neighbors was this guy named George. He was a Texas Syndicate member. I say was because he renounced the gang or the organization, whatever you want to call it. You know, this is not my politics, so I don't speak on whether, I don't really have an opinion of it, because we always like to think that everything is black and white. You know, for me, there are some things that are black and white. If you're a rat, if you're, you know, if you violate women, you violate kids, you know, those things are non-negotiable. They're, for me, unacceptable. So if you're guilty of any of those things, then I'm not going to hear the rest of your story, because those things pretty much revoke your player's card. But, like prime example, me here today, right now. Being able to speak to you, being able to share these videos, my experience with you. I wouldn't feel right sitting here speaking on the subject that I speak on, if I was one of these busters, And if I was one of these busters, I wouldn't be able to be here doing these videos and still engage in my community. Because when you sign up to this life, there's certain expectations that needs to be met, that are expected from you by the people that accepted you into the organization. And for me, I'm grateful that I'm able to be here. I'm grateful that I made it home, because, I committed my life to this. When I first went in, I was facing 65 years, possible multiple life sentences. But no matter what time they brought my way, my mentality was, this is the life that I signed up for. So whatever comes with it is what it is. Now, that's not to mean to say that I didn't feel the impact when the judge hit that gavel and said 310 months. I'm not without emotion. I'm not without, So, yeah, I felt it. I felt, that, you get the sting in your eye. But it's not a sadness, when the tears started flowing, it was just anger and frustration. But I was fortunate. I say that and to somebody that is not fully invested in this lifestyle, when I tell you, hey, I spent 24 years straight inside of USP, but right now at this moment, I feel that I'm fortunate to be here. Some people might not be able to understand it, but if there's 1,000 other people in my situation that got life sentences or never coming home, then you'll understand that even though that was a quarter of a century, I still got blessed according to the lifestyle that I was living, according to the things that I've done. You'll never hear me complain about going to prison or about getting the time that I did. I'll never sit here and pretend that I was innocent or that I didn't have it coming. I accepted that. My only issue with the time that I was doing was how they convicted me and the extra stuff that they used to enhance my sentencing that they shouldn't have. But outside of that, I understood my predicament and I understood my fate and I accepted it. But that was me as a teenager. That was me not having the life experience and not understanding what a lifetime commitment really means. If you're 19 years old, how many 19-year-old kids out there are planning to work in an industry or in a company for 20 plus years so they can collect their 401k and retirement and Social Security? Some of us don't even know what the hell we're doing next week. Like I said, I emphasize again, some things that we might feel that it's acceptable and it's cool when you're young aren't going to be the same thing that we accept as we're older. And with me, I did my time. I did everything that was expected of me and some. So when I came home, I mean, we didn't sit down and have a conversation about what direction my life is going to take from here on out. But my people understand that I've given up enough of my life, and they respected that and allowed me to just move on without any conversation, without any issues or anything like that. I'm invited to their kids' graduations, you know, birthdays and baby showers and all that. But that's me. I'm fortunate because, you know, the gang that I'm from, we all grew up together as kids. So at the end of the day, we all have love and respect for each other. And we never gotten so big, so powerful or anything where the money dictates our interaction and our relationship with each other. You know, I share that with you to emphasize that, again, I'm fortunate that I'm in the circumstances that I am, but a lot of people that get involved, especially with gangs that are in prison, with gangs that are considered higher level, these are lifetime commitment. You got to spill some blood to get in. And to get out, it's the same way, but it's not somebody else's blood. Like, you can't go kill somebody and get out of it. The blood that needs to be spilled is yours. That's not to say that you don't reach a certain level where your people will respect you and honor you and allow you to gracefully retire. Those things happen, but for the most part, those organizations are too intricate and too deep that you're never going to be allowed to walk away from it. So this guy, George, that I met in the shoe, he was my neighbor. And when we go out to rec, he'd be in the rec cage next to me. You know, rec is all you have to socialize when you're in the shoe. Because outside of that, you're in your cell by yourself or with a cellie. But in Florence, there's no books, there's no radio, there's no magazines. Like, if you don't figure something out, you're gonna freaking drive yourself nuts in that shoe over there. I was in there for 6 months. And so I look forward to rec. And through the course of my time meeting this dude, George, I got to know his story. He's a TS member. Now, I'm gonna emphasize that he's not a rat. He sent me his paperwork. His issue, I just go along and you can judge for yourself. But he had gotten out. He did state time, or he had done time before, and he had been home for maybe 2 to 4 years. He was home. He was doing good, but at the same time, he's got that patch on his arm. You know, the TS, they tattooed the TS on the left arm over here. He's got that patch. So with that patch, I mean, you can call it a tattoo, you can call it a patch or whatever, but it's a branding that identifies you and state to everybody else that's in the know, that's in the game, who you belong to. So with that patch comes obligations. And for the people that I'm meeting that are my age or younger, you already know they weren't the founders of the organization. So anybody else outside of the committee, outside of the council, outside of the board members, everybody else is on call. You're a hitman until you hit the grave. Because as long as there's somebody that outranks you, you're going to dance to somebody else's tune. So this dude, he was out there doing what he was supposed to do, doing good. He said he was working at a club and stuff, taking care of his daughter. And he got a phone call. He's got that tattoo, that patch, that branding on him. So when that phone call comes, there's no let me think about it. There's no ifs and ands. That's what you signed up for. So when that phone rings, you got to go. So a couple dudes called him. They picked him up, and he didn't really get into the details of the situation, but 2 people ended up getting killed. And obviously they didn't get away with it, but it turned out that the other 2 individuals told on him. This dude did time, came home, was doing good, but got a phone call from his people and ended up catching 2 life sentences. So when I ran into him, he was in Florence. And he's got a daughter at home that's going to grow up without him because he got 2 life sentences. So he's contemplating his mortality. He's contemplating his life. And he got to the point where he had a religious awakening. You know, he started reading the scriptures and started building a faith and wanted to become a Christian. He wanted to change his life and become a Christian and dedicate his life to God. But his people didn't allow it. You know, he tried to go to them and say, hey, look, man, I want to change my life. I want to move on. Now, again, he wasn't a rat. He got 2 life sentences because other members of his organization told on him. They know that because he was on the yard. But so when he came to them and was trying to tell them, hey, look, man, I want to bow out. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do. I want to move on with my life. I want to dedicate my life to God. Some of his people had issues with that. And they ended up jumping on him. He didn't check in. He didn't run away. He knew it was coming. So he dealt with it and he got X'd out. Like I don't know the extent of his injury, but you know, when the TS or Texas MA or any of these families move on someone, especially one of their own, they're not coming up there trying to beat you up. They're not coming over there with a padlock. It's all bone crushers. And these bone crushers, I'm talking about, you know, a piece of steel that are the size of your forearm. So when they hit you, even if your bone is in the way, it's going to crush it. That's why they call them bone crushers. But you know, he got to a point in his life where he was able to reflect on the things that he was doing and came to the point that he didn't feel that he agreed with it anymore, that those things weren't acceptable to him anymore. But for him, it was too late. You know, too late in 2 aspects. One, he's already got a life sentence. But you know, if you really believe there's an afterlife or whatever, then maybe it's not too late. But for the life that we know, the life that we live here now, right now, in the present, the one that we can touch and taste, he forfeit that. But not only that, you know, now he can't walk in the yard with any of the people that he grew up with because he's deemed a dropout now. Because he wanted to convert his life to a higher calling. But for whatever reason, his people didn't allow that, didn't accept that. And again, I emphasize again, in my situation and others like me, you know, we're not considered an organization. We're just a low-level street gang, bunch of thugs running around or whatever. But through the course of our time, we all have our experiences and our own growth. But for the most part, if you go to prison and you sign up with one of these families, like, you'll know the difference between, you know, little boys club when you're a kid in junior high, to high school, to in the streets, to organized family, organized crime, whatever. There's different. What's the saying? There's different levels to this shit, and you need to understand the level that you're trying to involve yourself in, because some of the doors you go through, you can never come back from. Welcome to the USP.